Shalom Chavrim, warm welcome in Yeshua's name to all the Talmudim, all who are here online. Just a couple of things I think last week has been very important because a lot of important things have happened also. I just want to dedicate this shiur to these couple of people have who have had their birthdays and their anniversaries so I dedicate the shiur to them. One is Mrs. Nirmala Isaac, who is the aunt from Madhura Gavandi's aunt. It was her birth anniversary, and I know the family do miss her. May God bless her soul. May God elevate her in His presence. Joshua Pari Mora's son's birthday was also this week on the same day as Ronak, Naina's son's birthday. I think it was his 18th birthday. And Josh, I think it was his 25th birthday. May God bless you all. May God shower His kindness and His light upon your lives. Talmidim Sonia's birthday, it was also this week. Sonia, I hope you had a wonderful time. May God bless you for your love and dedication and kindness towards Him. Sharon's mom, Sharon Sindur, it was your mom's birthday also. So we dedicate all of this to all these people who we've mentioned and their names. May God shine the light, lift the countenance towards them, and God bless each one of them, especially also Mumtaz and family, who has been fighting a battle and fighting a huge battle in life. May God bless you for your kindness and your grace also towards the yeshiva. Oh, okay. So, okay, that's the connection. Okay, fine. God bless each one of you. Okay, so I dedicate this shiur to all of them. May God's light and countenance be upon their faces, and God protect and show them. Today we are in a very important shiur, my friends. Nothing going to be very spiritual on what we're going to talk about, what we're going to learn today. Nothing supernatural, but we're going to just read things form the basis of the Torah and the basis of the giving of the Torah. And we are in Parashat Mishpatim. That is chapter 21 to chapter 24 of the book of Exodus. So if you all have your Bibles with you, please open to chapter 21 to chapter 24, and we're going to study something. Now, before I explain what is happening out here, a little historical background. Okay, they have been brought out of Egypt by God. They're standing at the mountain, and then God speaks to them from the mountain. He's revealing His inner thoughts, those 10 words or statements that God is speaking to them, if you all remember last time. And now the giving of the Torah is a long drawn out process. Okay, God was speaking to them, and God wanted to show them His power and His might and His glory, right? And He wanted to show them that He is God. So He descended with all kavod on that mountain, with fear and with fire and brimstone and lightning and voices and thunder. And then they realized that this is serious business. This is God, right? And then Moses tells them, he says, don't be afraid. If God wants to destroy, He can destroy everything in a second, but He's not going to touch you. Just showing you what He is and who He is, so you'll be afraid of the God that you'll see and the God that you'll worship. Then He tells Moses, the Lord tells Moses, come up and I will give you all the instructions and the mishpat, the instructions, the Torah, and the mitzvah. 3 different things altogether that comes from very simple understanding of what has happened. So Moses goes up to the mountain, to Har Sinai, and God is revealing things to him, and he comes down, and then he writes them in a book, and he explains it to the people, and then they say all that the Lord has said we will do. For the first time and the second time, they say Nishma, and everything that the Lord said we will do and we will hear. Now in Parashat Mishpatim, which is chapter 21, it's immediate after chapter 19 and 20, okay, that talks about the giving of the Torah. That's Parsha Yitro, which we studied last time. So last time we didn't touch a lot on Har Sinai, but we touched on the joy of living in the Torah. Now, immediately when the giving takes place, there's a shift of gear in the entire topic of what's happening in the Torah. Chapter 21 starts with all these decrees and all these problems that are addressed between man to man. Okay, the judgment. So this word mishpat simply means decrees and judgments. It comes from the word shafar, to give a decree, to speak, or to pronounce a decree or a judgment. So therefore we get the word mishpat. Now, to get a very comprehensive understanding, there are different words that convey different things from the point of view of what God is giving Moses out here. One is Torah, that comes from the root word horaha. Horaha means simply instructions. Horot, hora, instructions. Parents are called horim in Ivrit because they are instructors to their children. Okay, so Torah comes from the word horaha, which is instructions. Mitzvah comes from the word tzav, that means commandments. And we should be very, very clear not to mix up these two. What are instructions and what are commandments? Then there is another word called chok or chokim. Chokim are decrees. What is a decree compared to a commandment and compared to an instruction? An instruction is simply what needs that, this is how you do it. I advise you to do this. It's an instruction. A commandment is this needs to be done this way. So it's a commandment. You got to do it. You have to follow it, right? An instruction is given. You can hear it, adhere to it, do it, don't do it. It's a different thing altogether. A commandment means I will hear and I will do, right? Exactly what they told Moses. A chok is a decree, as a judge gives a decree and says the defendant and the person and both parties now will adhere to this decree because I have given a law and I've given a decree. That's it. Don't ask any questions, just do it. So you have different gradients of instructions that God has given. One is a Torah, it comes from the word just instructions. The other one is commandments that have got to do with certain aspects of living that God wants you to perform. And then a higher than that is just do it. Don't ask questions. Those are decrees that is spelled out by God. He said it. It stands eternally. That's what you got to do. But mishpat is something else now. Mishpat comes from the point of interpreting the Torah, instructions. So what do I mean by this? Or what does the Bible mean by this? It means you can take a simple instruction and you can say, can someone please explain to me what this instruction is all about? How do I follow this instruction? I don't understand it. Okay, and this is exactly what Moses was doing in chapter 19. Okay, when his father-in-law Yitro came and seen Moses from morning to night, sitting with the children of Israel and judging them. So this word judging them, he was doing mishpat. So everyone brought their problems and case before him, and he put it into perspective of the instructions that God had given them, and he And he told them, this is what you need to do, follow in perspective of God's eternal instructions, and you apply it. This is how you live. You don't need commandments for that. You don't really need commandments. If the Torah says, love your, honor your mother and father, you just honor your mother and father. There is no formula of how you're supposed to do it. You don't need to buy a Mercedes or a Lexus every year for your parents. There's no formula. That's not the way you honor your parents. Simply just listen to the instructions and you honor them. So there is no formula. The thing is that you will hear two instructions and you will be humble enough to live. That's Horah, that's Torah. So what was God doing on Sinai? He spoke Torah, simple instructions to them and said, I am the Lord your God who brought you out from Mitzrayim. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Uh, uh, honor your mother and father. Okay, keep the Shabbat, right? Then goes on to the second portion of it, that is got to do with uh, the human aspect. So the first aspect is between God and you. The second aspect of it is between man and man. So the first five have got to do with God, your relationship with you and God, and the second five have got to do with man to man, human to human. And this is where you bifurcate these 10 instructions or 10 matters or 10 statements God made and said, these are my instructions to you. Now, based on those instructions, if you want to apply those instructions in your life, you need explanation because everybody has questions. Everybody has questions. You can have very simple questions, or you can have a very complex question. If those 10 words God says, thou shalt not steal, but you never stolen anything in your life, really? Do you even realize that you don't need to steal something physically? You can steal someone's intellectual property rights. You can steal somebody's time, somebody's energy. There's so many things you can be stealing from. And when you sit and you reflect and you think about these things, then you are left with a problem. Say, no, 1 second. How do I apply all these things in my life? So I can take the most simple of its instructions and get very complex questions out of it. If I'm a thinker, if I'm learning how to apply these things in my life, if I'm seriously wanting to apply this, therefore those instructions of the 10 words that were spoken can be bifurcated level, sub-level, and sub-level into different aspects as a comprehensive aspect to life that comes under the 613 commandments, okay, that ultimately become 613 commandments from the Torah, and that is applying yourself to the instruction that God gave. Now the commandments that are different from the instructions, pretty much different, because God commanded them, you will build the Mishkan and you will do this and you will maintain the Mishkan, and this is how you will collect the blood, and this is how you will slaughter the animals, and this is how you will give your tithes, and you will just. It's a higher level, it's an overlapping of instructions as well as doing and performing that becomes commandments, and it gets more complex. And then you have the para aduma, the red heifer, right, which is a chokim. Just do it. Don't have, no questions asked. You just perform it. In chapter 21 of Exodus, we are thrown into Mishpatim, and this is very crucial for you all to understand, because chapter 21, 22, and certain portions of 23 is dealing with, basically, if you look at it very carefully, it's got to do with how people treat one another and how you have to have compassion and a sense of, how do I live my life without hurting or transgressing another person. So therefore, it's got about slavery and buying somebody and selling somebody and this and that, and it's got a lot of damages and restitution and how many pieces of silver I need to give for your ox, your cow, and someone does this, he needs to be put to death. It sounds very, very gory. But why is this so spat right here? I have to give you all a brief right from the beginning, because when these instructions were given to Moses and Moses commuted them to the people, they were supposed to follow it. So Moses wrote down the instructions, which is like a textbook, but this textbook needs to be explained. It's like going to school and saying, okay, I'm studying physics or math or chemistry, I'm studying and I've got a textbook, right? And if I'm going to mug the textbook without going to school or class and hearing a professor actually expound it and explain to me, apply it and say, okay, this is how you need to understand it, that makes a bigger difference. So before it is written down into a textbook and given to me, it already existed in a oral level. When it's written in the oral level and then written in the book and given to me, now I have two versions of those instructions. I have the oral and I've got the written. Because if I don't have the written, I'm not going to be able to refer back to the oral. So understand, the reason why Moses also wrote it down was that they would refer back to it, and when they refer back to it, they will answer. It'll come to their mind, this is what God said, meant, and this was the instructions that were given to us. Moses has written it down in a furtive manner, but I understand what Moses is saying, right? So it's like a textbook that needs to be explained. That is the origin of the Torah, Katuv, the written Torah, Miktav, and the Torah She'baal Pe, the oral Torah. So for those people who say there is, no such thing as the oral Torah, it's a ridiculous statement. Because if there was no oral Torah, which is the source of the written Torah, then you will not have a written Torah. Chapter 21 is the root of something far bigger now. So Moses commuted it to Yehoshua. Yehoshua commuted this to the judges. The judges commuted it to the Nevi'im prophets later. Then the prophets till Yirmiyahu, they went into exile. The Anshe Knesset Hagadola commuted it to the 70 elders, okay, who were the Anshe Knesset Hagadola. And when they came back from the exile in Babylon, that was commuted to the Zugot, the 5 pairs. The 5 pairs commuted it then to the Tanaim, the 1st century and the 2nd century scribes and the Pharisees. Okay, what happened after the second temple was destroyed? The oral Torah was put to the test. There was nothing written till then except for the prophets and except for Moses, what Moses wrote down. That was all that was there, the prophets and the Torah. The oral Torah, then the instructions, remember, the commandments, the commandments of how to do, what to take, how much to take, all that was all oral till then. It was not written down. Around 200 CE, Common Era, Yehuda HaNasi, the great Rav, he was the one who got down, and all that the Zugot and the people before them, the scribes and the Pharisees before them, sat down, and what they said and they heard, they got down and they wrote it, and he wrote it into 6 sections called the Mishna, from the word Shana, which means to visit itself every year. Okay, and that's how the 6 Seders of the Mishnah were written. So you have 6, the Mishnah which has 6 orders, Seders, Berachot, um, the agricultural zerahin seeds, uh, and when we're studying the Mishnah, we'll get to those portions. One of those six cedars is the cedar called Nezikin. That's got to do with all laws of damages and people hurting each other and how do you restitute. So basically, hardcore stuff that is got to do with bordering on justice, criminal justice. So if you read ever are able to understand the Mishnah and go to Seder Nezikin, and under Seder Nezikin, there are specifically three tractates out there: Baba Kama, Baba Batra, okay, and there's another tractate, three of them that have got to do with the laws of damages, because the word of Nezikin is about damages. In chapter 21, we are spat on about damages. That how you, if you if a person's taken as a slave, if he's sold as a slave, how much is restitution? If somebody's killed by mistake, what is the restitution? All that is covered in the Mishnah. So the Mishnah covers point A to B complete of all the oral Torah. Subsequently, after Yehuda Nasi put down these six cedars and gave them all the different tractates within them, totally about 63 tractates within the six cedars, I think. Yeah. Then they got down to expounding it and creating midrashim on it, expounding it. And those midrashim were called Gemara. Okay, so they would read one line from the Mishnah. Okay, what did Yehuda Nasi mean by saying something like this? What about seeds? What about the agriculture? What about tithing? If he says, okay, you want to tithe so much and you have to tithe 10% in this thing, and they spoke about it and they debated that and they wrote all that, and that became the Gemara. Then what do? They amalgamated the Gemara with each verse they expounded with a Mishnah. So they took a verse from the Mishnah, point from the Mishnah, inserted the Gemara of what this guy said and what this rabbi said and that rabbi said, and the amalgamation of both became the Talmud. And that is the explanation of the oral Torah. But it's very interesting if you're ever reading the different cedars of the Mishnah, all the comprehensive law in terms of marriage, levirate marriage, agriculture, everything in composite is mentioned in that. That has come down. So when Yehuda Nasi took that oral and finally put it into a book, now we have the written Torah, the written instructions that Moses gave, as well as the oral Torah also, that is supporting and explaining what Moses wrote in one sentence. They have written volumes about it. Okay, very simple of that. So in chapter 21, we read all this. I know you'll have read chapter 21, 22, and it's exhaustive. Some people call it repelling. Some people say, it should not be in the Bible. How can you talk about slaves and buying somebody and selling somebody and ridiculous things, right? But in context of the times and the people at that point of time, these things nevertheless did happen, and God knew that this kind of culture existed, so God has to deal with them in that level and accordingly. Therefore, it was inserted into all of this. So that was the culture, buying, selling people, and it was a culture then. So, I mean, to look at it from the spectacles of 2023 and to judge them then, it won't be fair. Okay, so please understand this, because a lot has changed. And the most beautiful part of it is when you look at it, God adapts with humanity and the progress of humanity himself, generation to generation. And he still has the same kind of mercy he had with them, and he has the same kind of mercy with us today. So if anyone says that God is not progressive, just think of what you're saying. Very progressive. Okay, now, so that's 21. I'm not going to get into that because it's too heavy. I will need the Mishnah and the Talmud to start talking to all about it. It will take years to expound all of this. So let's not get into that. Open with me. We'll jump straight to chapter 23. We'll do a little of 23 and 24. Where are we? So chapter 23 introduces them to the Shlosh Regalim, the three feasts that they have to come and present themselves 3 times a year. That is during Pesach, during Shavuot, and during Chag Asif, or the Feast of Tabernacles. It was mandatory for everybody to come, okay? And that was tied with the tiding system, the Maaser, and that was tied all as a centrality to Jerusalem, to the city in Jerusalem, and the Beth Hamikdash in Jerusalem. And God says, you will come for your festival offerings, okay? And then he warns them in verse 20. He says, behold, I send an angel before you to protect you on the way and to bring you to the place that I have prepared. Wow. Listen to the language, very beautiful. He says, Hine anochi sholeach malaach lefnecha le shomrecha bederech ule haviika el hamakom asher akinati. He says, the place that I have prepared. But physically, there are the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Jebusites, the Amalekites, and all the sons of Ham in the land of Israel. So where has he prepared it? So what land is he talking about? God has already prepared a place for his people. He's prepared a land for his people, and when he's bringing them to it, he's talking not only about a physical land, he's talking about a much higher land than you and me can understand. Okay. And then he says, if you hearken to his voice and do all that I shall speak, beware of him, he says, beware of him, hearken to his voice, do not disobey him, for he will not forgive your transgression. He will not forgive your transgression. For my name is written within him. If you hearken to his voice and do all that I shall speak, then I shall be the enemy of your enemies, and I shall oppress your oppressors. For my angel shall go before you and bring you to the Amorites and to the Hittites and to the Perizzite, the Canaanite and the Hivite and the Jebusite. Okay. 1 second. Okay. Chapter 24. Let's go to chapter 24. Verse 1. ואל משה אמר אלך אל אדוני אתה ואהרון ונדב ואביהו ושבעים מזקני ישראל והשתחוויתם מרחוק. And Moses, he said, go up to the Lord, you and Aaron and Nadav and Abihu, and the 70 elders of the Israel, and you shall bow down and prostrate yourself from a distance. And Moses shall approach by himself towards the Lord, but they shall not approach, and the people shall not go up with them. So only Moses will approach the Lord. The 70 elders will remain down. Okay. And then Moses went up to the Lord, and God gave him all the instructions. And then he comes down and he told the people all of the words that the Lord had said, and all the Torah, and the entire people responded with one voice, and they said, all the words of the Lord have spoken, we shall do. Oral Torah, all that the Lord has said, we will do. Then Moses writes all of the words of the Lord. He arose early in the morning and built an altar, and then he consecrates the altar with blood, and he consecrates the 70 elders, and then the elders go back on top with them again. And then it says Moses and Aaron and Nadav and Abihu and the 70 of the elders of Israel ascended. They saw the God of Israel, and under his feet was that which had the form of a sapphire stone. So it says that they saw the God of Israel, which is not a positive statement, it's a negative statement, and I'll tell you why. And it was as if under the feet of the Lord was that he was standing on a huge sapphire stone. And the appearance of him was like the appearance of the heavens in its purity. And the nobles of the children of Israel, he did not send forth his hand. They viewed God and they ate and they drank. This is the negative statement out here, that they saw the God of Israel, but their perception of him was not accurate. That is why you cannot take this as a positive pasuk, but you have to take this as a negative pasuk. And then it says that they ate and they drank. That means, what were they doing in the presence of God? So they seen something and they experienced something, and each one of them experienced something, and they came down and their hearts were in a different place altogether. They ate and they drank and they feasted and done whatever. That's why in the book of Deuteronomy, Moses very clearly says that on that day on the mountain, be careful of what you saw. You did not see anything that's either male or female, or any shape or image like a man or a beast or the bird of the air, nothing of that sort. Be very careful, because Moses knew that what they each one individually experienced on that mountain, their perception was not accurate. Therefore, to perceive God in its purity, one has to be very pure. That's why Yeshua says in the book of Matthew, for the pure in heart shall see God. So how do you purify that? How is this purification happen? What is the meaning of purification of the heart, so you'll be able to perceive God in the purity of his holiness? It's not very easy. It's not very easy. So you have to have a very high level of tahara in the soul, so you'll be able to perceive God in his, and even then you cannot grasp, because your human mind is not going to grasp the whole of him. You're just going to see something, and you'll try to say, okay, he was like this and he was like that, he was like this. It's not going to be a whole picture, my friends. And then the Lord said to Moses, ascend to me to the mountain and be there, and there I will give you the tablets of stone and the Horaha and the Torah and the commandments that I have written to instruct them. So when was this written? God says that I've already inscribed, that I've already written. Listen to this again. Vayomar Adonai el Moshe ale elai ha-hara v'heya sham v'etna lecha et lukhot ha-even v'ha-torah v'ha-mitzvah asher katavti lechorotam. You are getting the difference now? Ascend the mountain, remain there, and I will give you the tablets of stone, and I will tell you the instructions and the commandments that I have written. So now there's possibly three different things God is talking about here. He's giving them the stone that is written with the 10 words. And by the way, uh, according to the sages, the stones that were given were not the stones that you and me have seen in the movie 10 Commandments, those two stones that Moses was carrying with a rounded shape. That's absolutely wrong. There were cubic stones, square, which were written front, back, and on the sides. On in all six sides, God's had inscribed with his finger, and what he had inscribed were words of fire. It said it was fire, and the stone itself was sapphire stone. So the fire and each consonant and each word that was written by God, it was like fire within the stone of sapphire. You know how beautiful it must have been. And that Moses broke. Moses broke that. And said when he broke, the living word departed, went back. It went back to the eternal Father. The pieces of the sapphire remained. And Moses took those, what was left of the sapphire stones, and put it into the ark. And then he tells Moses, come back on top again and bring stones that now you have carved from molten rock. So Moses goes to stones in this earth and carves it out, takes it on top, and God says, looking on the right, and he instructs them all over again. But it's not like the first stones that were given that Moses broke. Not like that, my friend. That was crushed, that was broken. It was over. Okay. So he gives them the stones, right? And the Torah. So what were the instructions? And the commandments and the mitzvah that I have written. That means this was already written and inscribed from the foundation of the world. It was always ready. And this is where Rav Shaul talks about in Romans. He says, every human being has been encoded with the instructions of life, because God has already put in the encoding of nature and humanity, written in the hearts, the silent message of creation of God's will. What is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, it's already there. You cannot tell a person what is right or wrong. Every person knows for himself, okay, yeah, this is right. What am I doing this? Or this is wrong. Why am I doing this? Or this is right. Right? Everybody's conscience bears witness to himself. And Rav Shaul says, for those who live without the Torah and live by the conscience, it's the Torah unto themselves. So what does Rav Shaul mean by this in the book of Romans? He's trying to say that the difference between the Jewish people and the rest of the world is that the rest of the world already have it as encoded, programmable language like a computer in everybody who's born in this world. But for the Jewish people, God descended on the mountain and spoke to them those very same things. Now, what was already encoded into humanity is being spoken by the living God to a people. So now it's been revealed. The word has been revealed to them, but not for the nations. So Rav Shaul is saying their conscience also has the same thing. They will be judged according to that same thing as you are going to be judged also. So Jewish people, then he goes on to say, what does it profit to be a Jew? In all ways, he says, because to them is given the promises and the covenants and the Torah and the instructions. They were the keepers of it, of the spoken word. They were the keepers of it, the spoken word. So understand the role of what Israel is supposed to do. He says, ascend to me to the mountain and be there, and I shall give you the tablets of stone and the Torah and the commandments that I have written. So he wrote it before Moses ascended the mountain. But the question is, when did he write it? Excellent. To instruct them. So now Moses is sitting and instructing and telling them, teaching them the basis of all things. You know what's the basis of all things? Emunah and faith. First, you have to believe that there is a God. Based on that faith, you will listen, you will adhere, and you will take instructions and you will live your life. Faith is the foundation, emunah, of all things. The foundation of faith, after that comes your commandments. You cannot do the commandments without faith. If you land up doing all the commandments and you don't have faith, your commandments are of no use. And this is what Rav Shaul is trying to tell us in the New Testament. He says, he's telling the Gentiles, you're all coming in by faith. He says, but no, 1 second, just hold on. You'll be at the foundation level right now. Because if you don't have this foundation, you will not be able to do what was given to Jewish people. And by the way, he says, we stumbled ourselves because everything that we done is we lost faith and we were just doing without the foundation of faith. And he gives the example of Abraham. He says, see, Abraham, he entered in by faith. Therefore, he was able to do the commandments of God because first he was able to take the instructions that is built up by faith. So you have the foundation of faith. On top of that is the Torah of Moses that God gave Moses. And then it's a higher level and a higher level goes up and up. So be very, very, very sensitive to this. I know a lot of people who say that, okay, I want to start doing the commandments. I have a lot of young people say, okay, I want to start looking Jewish and behaving Jewish and this. It's a very good thing. But if your foundation is not of emunah and faith, then you're not going to be able to keep the commandments. The very reason Moses done what he done, Aaron done what he done, and subsequently all of them done what they done because the foundation was faith, emunah. Then Moses arose and Joshua's servant, and Moses ascended to the mountain of God. And to the elders he said, wait for us here until we return to you. Behold, Aaron and Hur are with you. Whoever has words should approach them. Whoever has any issues, approach Aaron and Hur because we're here. And he takes Joshua and goes on top. Then Moses ascended the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain, and the glory of the Lord rested upon Sinai, and the cloud covered it for a 6-day period. He called to Moses on the 7th day from the midst of the cloud. Now Moses goes and he's waiting there. God called him and he's waiting there for 6 days on the mountain. No water, no food, nothing. He's sitting and he's waiting. 6 days he's waiting for. Suddenly on the 7th day, God appeared. The glory of the Lord rested upon Sinai, and the cloud covered it for a 6-day period. He called to Moses on the 7th day from the midst of the cloud. Now, after 7 days, Moses, oh Lord, you're here. The appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a consuming fire on top of the mountain before the eyes of the children of Israel. Moses came in the midst of the cloud and ascended the mountain, and Moses was on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. Ooh. So 1 second, 40 days and 40 nights? 40 days and 40 nights minus 7 is 33 days he was getting instructions from God. 6 days he was just sitting idle on the mountain doing nothing, waiting because God told him, come up and wait. You know how many times God tells us to do something in life? Come here, sit here. And we're like, now what do I do? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and we're still waiting. God's testing endurance. He's testing endurance. Then he sits, and for the rest of the 33 days, God's giving him the instructions, the mitzvah, the commandments, okay? And then he has to go down and give mishpat, explain it to them, and judge between the people. So why do you think Moses was judging the people in mishpat? Why do you think? And I think Rav Shaul Paul touches upon this in the New Testament. He says, for the Torah and the law was given to those who need it. Because you are bad, you need all the commandments and the instructions. If you're good, you don't really need so many instructions. If humanity was good, we will have very less laws. If humanity around us is good, We won't need so many laws and constitutions and bylaws and salient features and civic duties and rules and regulations. Do you know the amount of rules and regulations that we're governed with every day? There'll come a time in this world that humanity will be so bad and so corrupt that to even step out of your house, you will have to adhere to some rule and regulation. In fact, we already are. You live in a society, you have rules and regulations in a society. You cannot do this, you can't do that, you can't go there. You take your dog for a walk, you have to pick up the poop. What is this? Really? This wasn't there 50 years ago. But why now? Because as humanity progresses, and we think we are progressing, we think we're getting better, right? We're more fluent, better life, more technology, but in fact is entrapping us from this entire system of laws. So the more we are progressing, actually, the more laws we require to keep ourselves safe. I mean, 15 years ago, where were the cyber laws? Where were the cyber laws? Today, cyber laws so big. So humanity is in a place, my friends, that we think we're improving as a species, as a people, as a nation, as a as a tribe, as a kindred, whatever you want to call them. But truly we're not. We're getting bigger, 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 bigger into rules and laws and regulations, and there'll come a time you're going to be suffocated. You'll not be able to live. So just to highlight everything, Mishpatim resembles the world that we're living today because the world that we're living today was not so complex 100 years ago. It's become a lot more complex. Life was more simple 100 years ago. Relationships between husband and wife were more simple 100 years ago. There was more trust, there was more communication, there was more acceptance of each other. So many things. But today, people are closer to one another, but there is no communication. We are closer to one another, but there is no trust. We are building our relationships on materialism, no honor, and no virtues. I'll give an example. My grandparents, we've all railway people, right? And for them, to be in the railway means my grandmother had to wait 1 week to 10 days for her husband to come back from line. So if he was driving on his locomotive, he had his own engine. Okay, if he was taking a trip from Pune to Bangalore or Pune to Calcutta, that was like 4 days going to Calcutta, 1 day staying and 4 days coming back. 9 days to 10 days. But she was a virtuous woman. She knew her husband would go online. It would take him 10 days to come back, and he would come back. There was no, kind of telegraph and phone and mobile phone and email. Just think of what life we're living today. Full trust. What are we living today? 6:30, I'm picking up the phone and I'm asking my husband or I'm asking my wife, have you left the office? Where are you? Where have you reached? Really? Who are you with? When you're coming, bring this on the way. Why we not reached home? It's already one. Really? Last full 1 week you've been coming late home. Where have you been? Come on. You see how we've deteriorated as a people. So we have technology that's communicating faster, better, but there is no trust. We are closer, but yet we are further away in our hearts. We are building technology, we are building a progressive life, but it has to be governed with rules and regulations that's going to bind us. It's going to become cumbersome one day. It's going to be heavy on each one of us. Everything is signed, everything is executed, everything. There is no honor anymore. There's no honor like in the old days that people would shake hands and say, okay, covenant, done. That's it. You do what you have to do, I do what I have to, and that's trust. Finished. No, no. But today we have to go to a registrar of sureties and make an agreement and seal it and sign it and this. Why? Because I don't trust the other person. God knows humanity is frail. We are going to mess up. Therefore, He put into place rules and regulations and commandments so that they would adhere to it. Say, okay, guys, I know you're going to mess up, but conduct yourself this way. Okay, so this whole lot of oral Torah that was given was discussed, debated, analyzed, expounded into Midrash, put in together, written by Yehuda Hanassi in 200 CE, formed into the Mishnah. Mishnah was formed into the Talmud with the Gemara, and then from then the oral Torah now became such a big thing. I was having a conversation one day with some theological people, right? And we were talking about the Torah, we were talking about the oral Torah She'baal Pe, which is the oral Torah, and Torah Be Miktav, which is the written Torah. So they were under the opinion that, okay, no, there's no such thing as oral Torah. God gave the Torah to Moses, and that is it. So they came from a point of the stoking, Sadducees, because that's what the Sadducees believed. And I said, okay, fine, if you say so, that there is no oral Torah. I said, okay. So I asked one of them, I said, how many years or how many seasons have you been doing ministry work? 22 years. 22 years. How many sermons have you preached? I can't count. Do you have notes for all of them? Yeah, I've got my notes. I mean, whenever I could, I've got notes, except for when it was impromptu. I said, good. Collect all those notes, file it, make a book out of it. He looked at me very quizzed. What are you trying to say? I said, you want to know? You all say that the Jewish people had the oral Torah. You've done the same. Now take every Christian father for the last 2000 years and take out all the explanations that they've done. Take out all the sermons of all the great fathers of the Christian faith, put them all together, voluminous. And I bet and I guarantee that that will be 10 times or 100 times more than the Jewish oral Torah. Guaranteed. So we Christians also have an oral Torah, but we don't want to accept it. Come on, let's accept it. Each time someone goes to the pulpit and talks to you, it's oral Torah. No, but we reject the oral Torah, the Jews, you see, because there's no such thing. How much more hypocritical can we be, friends? Please keep this in mind. When you're reading Torah Mishpatim, it's, by the way, it's also called, Praveen had asked me a question today. Why is it called Shabbat Shelachim? Shekalim, sorry, Shekalim. It's got to do with the shekels of the temple. Because during that time, in the month of Adar, so there's either 12 months or 13 months on a leap year, right? So there's Adar 1, there's Adar 2. At the end of Adar, which is the 12th month, they would send these auditors out, reminding the people that they all had to come and give the half shekel for the temple fund. So all of Israel would get together and contribute the half shekel fund before they came into the month of Nisan. And this happened in the 12th month. Okay, that is why this Torah portion is called Shabbat Shekalim, because after this we go into now the month of Nisan and the month of the first month where we have Pesach. So Praveen, for the question that you asked, why is it called Shabbat Shekalim? It's because in those days they used to take the half shekel as a contribution for the fund for the temple and the Beth Hamikdash. So we've learned something more historical today in Parashat Mishpatim, because it's very important to understand these things. Very, very important. The basis, foundation of how everything was commuted, written down, given from one generation to the other, came down. Okay, how each generation progressed, right? And by the way, Yehuda Nasi took the step of taking the Torah She'baal Pe and putting it into written form only because of what Rome was doing to Judaism of the day. Now, there's a lot more history which I can tell you all about when the temple left, when the temple was destroyed, what happened to the Judaism of the day, and how they fled to Yavne, and how Judaism evolved itself into a different entity altogether. That's a different topic for a different time. But I just want you all to understand that, we have to learn and keep in mind all these small, small things. And above all things, God is dealing adaptively with every generation, friends. Okay. The more we declutter our lives, we use lot more and less of rules and regulations, we'll have a far happier life to live in the sight of God. God bless each one of you all. Have a lovely weekend. Shabbat Shalom to all of you all, and be blessed. Till we meet next week, God bless you.
Thank you, Maury.